And next item is approval of the minutes of November 22nd.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're going to hear from citizen comment first. And the first individual who signed up is Reverend Mark Dennis. Reverend Dennis. And then after that is Ted Mavrakis. After Reverend Dennis. Good evening, Reverend.
Good evening, Alderman, and all members of the Council and the Planning and Development Committee. I'm Reverend Mark Andrew Dennis, Jr., Senior Pastor at Second Baptist Church and moderator of the Evanston's Pastors Fellowship. I want to say to the city manager and all persons, thank you very much for the time afforded to the clergy to meet and discuss and to hear different viewpoints about Ordinance 77010. We still have our position that is basically to sound the alarm. We feel a sense of responsibility as citizens and members of this community, but we also state our opposition to it with its unknown implications that are troublesome to us still and still sufficient for further review and restructuring. We believe that the alarm sounded is loud enough and has been heard adequately by the council and others, that we would, of course, be supportive to what the aldermen do on behalf of the larger and the greater good of this community. We still believe that there is a concern of exclusion for new organizations, religious organizations who would desire to be birthed and gestated here in this community, to be for the greater good of ethics and civility and the quality of life. The rest is yet to be seen, and we would like to stay vigilant and supportive to whatever the city does. We just still express our various concerns. There have been other letters that have been submitted, and I have been asked to submit other responses. I think the members of the committee have a letter from Mark and Baker, which was addressed to the City Council. What you do not have, and I will give it to the clerk for your perusal later, are notices and petition signatures from citizens in the community, particularly those on Simpson and those around Howard. And as a custodian of their trust, I simply share these with you for your record and for the files. Again, we believe that there is a far greater, better building of the community that would take into consideration the value of churches regardless of size, the value of churches and they bring into this community as they are magnets for attracting other people into Evanston. And we would like to have ongoing dialogue and or conversations in the future about how that might be done for the greater good, again, for our community. One group kept out is one group too many. And we believe that that is a value that is cherished highly, not only in our different faiths, but also within the Constitution of the United States. Thank you.
Mr. Mavrakis?
Good evening. My name is Ted Mavrakis, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you again about this matter. I'm the landlord of 524, 526 Davis Street. I own this property for 4 years now. And besides this property, I own another 8 commercial properties in the city of Evanston. I'm happy to be in the city of Evanston, and I also operate for 28 years the Giordano's Pizza in Evanston. Evanston has been very, very good to me. For, besides the business, I met my wife here. I lived in Evanston, so I feel really, really good about Evanston. So 4 years ago, when I purchased this property, I believe the market didn't start going down yet. And like everybody else, I made my calculations on certain numbers. I guess those numbers, they haven't been proved right, and I have to admit that I'm not in a very good shape, but that's besides the point. So about a year ago, a young lady approached me, saw the space, and she said that she was the director of the daycare center for the hospital in Evanston. And they had so much demand that she felt there were another 300-400 families that they could accommodate to take care of their kids. So she looked at the space, and she proposed that she wanted to put a daycare center for children. So, and I don't want to go into details, but it sounded good. So she said that she had an investor that would put the money, and we signed the lease, and the stipulation would be I would get the rent after she would get all the appropriate permits and approvals. It took almost 8 months, and I have to admit that I didn't participate. I let her go and do all the work. She came to the city council, she got the approval, and it took almost 8 months. And finally, she came back and says, I got the approval. And she was happy, and I was happy that finally I would get a rent for the space. Well, a week later, we found out that the investor that she was supporting wasn't there anymore. And so she walked away. So almost like 6 months after that, these Omega people come, and it's deja vu. I mean, they're talking about the same type of operation, adult daycare center. And so I said, at this time, I would like to participate myself. I came to the city. I met with Mr. Dunkley, who was the zoning director, and I talked to him about it, and he said, as a matter of fact, we don't need any zoning approval again. It's the same zoning that covers whatever was approved by the city council. I said, perfect, except, says, unless the local alderman objects, then it's a different procedure. And that's exactly what happened. Alderman Fisk objected to the plan, and we submitted from the beginning the whole process. Now, as a landlord, I do have the responsibility to check the credit of the prospective tenant, and I start from there. I mean, I have to see that the credit is good, that they didn't leave another space and they came to me, and then I will deal with this. Once you go those stages, then you go to find out what type of operation they're going to do. And it always helps when a prospective tenant has another similar operation, which in this case, the Omega people have the one at Lincolnwood. I went and I visited the place myself, and I was happy to see that the operation was nice. I mean, I wouldn't mind to have a tenant like them. And like there is a report that was prepared by Yvonne Thomas. I don't know if you have that report.
Yes, we do.
And seniors who typically would be isolated receive musical entertainment, dance classes, and therapeutic activities such as arts and crafts, recreational activities, and daily exercise programs. That's what I noticed there too. And I said, first of all, these people are a viable tenant that has the ability to pay me a rent. Then whatever they propose is good. I guess we're winners here. And so I was surprised after almost now 6 months, and of course my property is empty, this particular one, for almost 4 years. Today I pay the property taxes, $65,000. And it is hard for you, whoever has a property, to have an empty space these days is very, very hard. And then when you've got a prospective tenant who qualifies with all the criteria, and then to lose it, it's really, really hard. So I'm here to plead with you that this is a viable tenant, and please, you have your right to deny or approve a tenant, which is very, very viable to me. I mean, I could go on and talk about it. So Alderman Fisk, with all due respect, the last time, she said, I would like to see a restaurant. I don't know, do I have enough time? How much time do I have?
I think it would be really important for the committee to move on and get to discuss this, but I think we did get all the reports from our staff that went and visited. We got all the information. I would really like to hear from Dennis Marino regarding this issue with the special use. Was the previous applicant a children's daycare? Is that what that was?
Correct.
Does everybody remember? We remember that, yeah.
The Children's Daycare Center was approved.
Okay, right. It is not the same use, and the alderman can't make a decision what's going to get a hearing on a special use and what isn't. The law is the law, and if it meets the threshold for a special use, it's going to get a special use hearing by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So if we could just hear for 1 minute from Dennis, I think we know your position, and I think we have all the information on this, and you're right, you're a longtime dedicated Evanston businessman and resident, but could we just clarify for you the special use issue? Okay.
I think the issue that's being raised is substitution of a special use, which is allowed in the zoning ordinance. In this case, though, what was approved was a child daycare center with certain characteristics. If that child daycare provider could not proceed and another child daycare provider came along and the enterprise were to have almost identical characteristics, at least very similar characteristics, then that could be a substitution of a special use. With regard to what is really a different use that happens to have the name daycare in it, adult daycare use would not, from my perspective, be eligible for a substitution of a special use because it's a different use with different characteristics, even though there may be some similarities.
It is very different. All right. So are you ready to wind it down? I don't want to cut you off. I'm not putting a time limit on it, but I think we all get it.
I just make one more comment.
Okay.
Now, besides from a landlord, just leave that alone. I'm a restaurateur. I operate Giordano's Pizza for 28 years just in that block. And as a restaurateur, we have now the fish house across the street. We have the two Chinese restaurants, okay? And put in another restaurant, I would have a problem. We're struggling now. I'm 25% below that, 10 years ago I was making. And put in another restaurant there, it would take business from all of us. So if that would be the case, to put a restaurant in this place, probably all of us would have to come here and jump and say, please, save us, because you don't want all of us to go down. So but from today I'm here as a landlord, and I have a prospective tenant. Please, don't deprive me from having that tenant so it can, help me pay my mortgage and my property taxes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next person is a reverend, and there is a junior, I believe, after his name, or her name, Reverend Dr. Sir, I'm sorry, I can't read your name.
I'm sorry. I didn't pass penmanship. I passed math, though. My first name is, I'll tell you when I get to the bottom.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. To Madam Chair, Alderman Rainey, to the members of the council, my name is Reverend Dr. Gessel, Berry, Gesselselberry.
Okay.
I pastor Sherman United Methodist Church, 1 block from City Hall, right on the corner on Ridge and Noyes. We have been in the community for since 1922. I rise to speak to Ordinance 77010 in support of our leader, Reverend Mark Dennis, to let you guys know what a privilege it is to speak before this body this evening. Mark is a Baptist, and you know sometimes Baptists and Methodists don't get along, but God has a way of pulling us together, amen? And that's what we're talking about within the city. A number of people raised questions as to the worth of the storefront churches. I remember when Evanston was a beginning community, United Methodists, or Methodist, the Methodist Episcopal Church, started this community, Northwestern University, and many of the institutions that exist today. There was a time when you couldn't sell alcohol like you can in the restaurants today. When I was attending Garrett, folk had to go over to Skokie. And many of the restaurants that sell alcohol today could not because of the Women's Temperance League and the support of the United Methodist Church. Churches are important to the fiber and the fabric of this community, and everyone has its beginning, our infancy stage, and many of the churches that are on Howard have that, and I think they present an alternative to many of the businesses. I drive down Howard coming from Chicago at night, and I see persons on the corners. They're not in churches. They're in many of the other businesses and institutions that are there. And I hope that we can support, as a committee, the need for the churches in terms of impacting the fiber of our community and support what our ecumenical group has been doing. And it's just a privilege to add to the support of our leader and to let you know how important this ordinance is for us to defeat it. And we have a need to lift up the fiber and the importance of churches in our community, and we stand to do that. I thank you for this opportunity to present to you our view in support of Reverend Mark Dennis, who is a wonderful leader, and he's done a great job. I didn't want him to stand tonight by himself, and to let you know that we have a corporate group before you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. God bless.
Thank you, Reverend Berry. Paul Heltko. I can read your name, but I can't pronounce it.
Good evening. I just wanted to say thank you for your consideration on the microdistillery ordinance, and I'm very short.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, committee, the first item of business that we have is the ordinance 96010, which is consideration of a special use permit for a micro distillery at 918 Chicago Avenue in the C1 Commercial Zoning District.
Move approval.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Alderman Nguyen, is this your ward, or is this the fourth?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Do you have anything to say about this?
I think that Mr. Letko has been very patient with our process, and I think that this is a terrific new business that we'll be having in our community, and I look forward to its opening in January. We hope, yes. So
And
there are many facets of opening this micro distillery, and this is another one along the way. So I urge the rest of the members of the council to move it forward as quickly as possible.
I was wondering, are you requesting a suspension of the rules?
Yes, I would like that tonight.
All right, I will mark that on the consent agenda.
Alderman Rainey, is your mic on? It's a little hard to hear.
My
you.
mic is on, and people have been, and I'm talking into it, but so,
right.
I know, I don't know what's wrong. Maybe I'll get hers if this keeps up. All right, anybody else? All those in favor, how's this? All those in favor
Better.
of introduction of ordinance 96010, which is a micro distillery at 918 Chicago Avenue, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next item is P2, ordinance 90010, which grants a special use for adult daycare center at 52426 Davis Street in the D4 Downtown Transition Zoning District. You heard tonight from Mr. Mavrakis, and I see that Alderman Fisk is here. Could I have a motion to recommend action on this? This is to recommend denial during our P&D meeting last week. So it's before us again, and I'd like to know what is the committee's decision here, and does Alderman Fisk wish to speak? Are you hearing me?
I'm
We hear
barely, but what I'd like to do actually is move.
Wait, let me change.
Having considered this further and giving it more thought and reviewed the materials that we've been provided with, my views changed. I would like to support the approval of the application.
Second.
Well, then, wait. Before us, we have the denial. So you want to amend the recommendation,
I would
is
like
what you're
to
saying.
move to amend the recommendation to a recommendation of approval.
Okay. That's a motion.
That's my motion.
I have a
Is there
second.
a second? Alderman?
Second it.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion and a second, and I think Alderman Fisk might wish to speak at this. Do you want to speak to that, Alderman Wilson?
Sure, although I suppose I'd be interested in hearing what Alderman Fisk has to say perhaps first.
Welcome, Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I've mentioned at previous meetings, the neighborhood we had a special meeting at the library on this issue, and without exception, the neighborhood was opposed to this use. I'm on. Are you not hearing? Concerns were many, but basically it was the feeling that this was not an appropriate use for a ground floor retail space in the downtown. We do have, there was a previous applicant that was a daycare center that was approved. The neighborhood was much more positive about that. Within the area of downtown, there are other adult daycare facilities. The neighborhood felt that that this was not going to enhance the ambience of the downtown area and could potentially be discouraging to other retail businesses who wanted to move in the location. This is a block that the neighbors feel could be a very lively, viable location for retail stores or any of the permitted uses in the area. But like we've heard, once we approve a special use, that special use is going to basically remain the same. That means if this adult daycare center leaves, another adult daycare center can move in. So the strong support of the neighbors was to try to work with the city, work with the landlord, and try to find a more appropriate use to the downtown and to the neighborhood. At no time was there any discussion about a restaurant. I've not heard about a restaurant. I certainly didn't support a restaurant because I haven't even heard about it. I don't know where that's come from. But I can't tell you, this neighborhood is very supportive and has supported the application for moving Mr. Mavrakis's business over to, that's Giordano's, over to the corner. And even though that was going to be some outdoor dining, they supported that and worked well within that discussion. They really don't support this. And given the other concerns about adult daycare, I would ask the committee, please, to recognize the wishes of the neighborhood and deny this application for special use.
Anybody else? You have to raise your hand because I can't see the lights. Alderman Wilson?
Thank you. And I certainly understand and recognize that the wishes and the desires of the people living in the neighborhood and also conducting business there are of the utmost importance. However, in recognizing where we're at economically, this is an empty space, and we have a lot of empty space downtown. We did receive some materials giving us some additional information on the vacancy rates and things of that nature. And frankly, the space has been vacant for a while, and this is the tenant that's there. At some point, we have to start saying yes to things. This doesn't seem to be a bad or a negative use. And I know that our staff has investigated the existing use in Lincolnwood, and to me that was a very positive report. The individuals that will be utilizing the space sound like they're fairly independent. I would imagine that they would probably be in the community, in the neighborhood, maybe shopping, going to other businesses, and I don't really see how this is really in any way a negative use or going to have a negative impact. So that's the reason I'd like to go forward and get this approved for the tenant and the use.
Alderman Holmes?
I certainly do understand the dilemma of the landlord. And my question still goes back to where I was on this last week or whenever we discussed it before in terms of the population. And and if you go back and read the report from Director of Health, Thomas, in terms of you have to understand what it means to have a community care program and what that entails. She certainly talked about them eating independently and not having to use wheelchairs or walkers. But that does not mean that there would not have to be some other care. And I'm concerned about the lack or the number of staff people to really provide the kind of supervision that I believe is necessary for adult daycare. This is not just an activity program, or at least the way it was described to me and what I'm reading here. I don't see that. I think that I believe the gentleman who spoke to us the last time talked about the one in the shopping center, them not being able to get out because of the traffic in that area. But I don't see anything in this report that tells me that they would be able to go outside of the center on their own without some type of supervision. We were told that this population in Evanston would be able to go and to the restaurants and to the stores and shopping and stuff, and I'm just not sold on that yet in terms of if that would actually happen. I have no problem if it had other components that tells us that this is an adult daycare where they're going to have the right amount of supervision to keep the population safe. I would be concerned about, I just would be concerned about their care. So that's why I would certainly support the recommendation for denial.
Alderman Jean-Baptiste?
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. I wanted to ask Dennis Marino. Dennis, you indicated that this would not fit as a special use. It seems to me that the Zoning Board of Appeals recommended that we grant the special use permit for the operation of a daycare center - adult. So what is, and then there's dissent was mainly around the issue of, they would rather see this space used for retail operation and not so much a dissent on the basis of whether or not this was consistent with what they had previously approved. So on what basis are you deviating from them at this particular point in time? And what was, did you intervene in the process of the discussion? I don't understand where you are now versus where apparently the city was.
Just to
at the time.
clarify, Alderman Baptiste, I was responding to Alderman, Alderman Rainey's question about substitution of a special use, which is a concept in the zoning ordinance. I think Mr. Mervakis indicated that he had been told by another staff person that substitution of a special use was appropriate, that the former child care center that was granted a special use, that the adult daycare center may be eligible to essentially take over that special use. And I do not agree with that. So basically, this is eligible for special use, and staff did recommend previously, much like the ZBA was a 4-2 vote in that regard. So I was only speaking specifically to the issue of Alderman Rainey's question about, is this eligible for substitution of special use based on the daycare special use that was granted, child daycare special use that was granted before? And my answer to that was no. But that was the only thing I was commenting on.
But it is eligible for special use?
Yes, sir, most definitely.
Okay,
yes.
fine. I just wanted to get that out of the way. The other issue, Alderman Holmes, and 2 weeks ago, my concern was basically in that vein as well, trying to understand better this adult daycare, and because it was new, I wasn't satisfied with the information. But I did look up the website and that were forwarded to us, and I also reviewed the report that Director Thomas issued. And I think that if we are going to deny this particular business to go in that space on the basis that we think they ought to have more supervision, I think that before we deny it, we should ask for more supervision if we think that there should be more supervision. The write-up here does not indicate to me that they said that they were not admitting folks who have mental problems, who have ambulatory difficulties, that, basically it sounds to me that would be a senior group that was pretty mobile. Now, whether or not they're able to go out in the street, now I know personally, my mother-in-law lives with us, and, I wouldn't want her to be walking the street by herself, but would I want an option sometime to be able to take her someplace where there's some activities, where she could be there with some like-minded people, et cetera, et cetera? I think that may be something that I might want without necessarily wanting her to be walking the street because, physically,
But you would
I
want
think
her
she
to have
needs some support.
you would want her to have adequate supervision, though, as well.
Supervision, yes,
Well, it states in it-
except that's what I'm saying, that if we want adequate supervision, and perhaps we could request that and see whether that could be provided. And since Director Thomas made an analysis and compared and observed what was going on, perhaps she might be able to make a recommendation. But I wouldn't see denial on the basis of there's inadequate supervision where there are other centers like that that exist that apparently have similar staff, and again, they're not admitting folks with mental illness or folks with ambulatory problems, but they've measured that the adequate staff for them is what they ordinarily provide. So if we want to ask for modification, let's do that, but I wouldn't want to see us denied. And I sympathize with the issue of what kind of use we make of the downtown space. But I think on balance, though, when I think of the landlord whose space has been vacant for such a long period of time, I think this is somebody with a great reputation who's done a great business in the city, and I wouldn't want to see that space continue to be vacant, and I don't see the detriment in allowing this use to go forward.
I'd like to say a few things on this, but do you want to respond to that, Alderman Holmes?
I just
And
wanted
then
to simply
Alderman
say
Watson.
that the other piece to that is if you read Ms. Needham's report, And if we look at the comparison that she gave us in terms of rental space per square foot, I think that that is something, certainly we have to be able, I think Alderman Wilson said that, we have to be able to look and make some concessions, but I think, and landlords have to do that too in terms of rental space because it is pretty high. So that, that might be one of the reasons why some of those spaces are vacant downtown, that maybe our landlords or maybe the chamber could take that on. I'm not sure who, but I was amazed by the difference in the cost per square foot of space in the downtown area. I just wanted to make that comment about, if we're going to get space rented down there, not only his space, but other space as well.
Alderman Wilson?
Thank you. And Alderman Holmes, I don't know if this, I guess, minimizes some of your concerns, but it appears that there is this approximately five or so pages of minimum standards that the administrative code provides. So, I'm reluctant to try to second guess what the state's decreed to be the standard. So that does give me a degree of comfort that there are guidelines that these will be applied, and they're not just operating without any rules or regulations.
Oh, I don't think they're operating without any. I'm just not sure that I'm comfortable with minimum.
I just want to say a few things about this. First of all, I'm very familiar with the location of the current facility, and it is on Lincoln Avenue. I worked a few blocks away from it on Lincoln Avenue. Walking on a sidewalk on Lincoln Avenue in that specific area is taking your life in your hands, no matter whether you're 40 years old or 80 years old. It's all traffic. People are speeding. It's not pedestrian friendly in terms of it's not really a shopping center. You know what I mean? It's a strip of uses. So that people don't go out and walk around there, I think is a good thing. But this location is very, very different. I very much supported the denial of this last time. And after reading the information, and I just want to make it very clear, the fact that there are vacancies has absolutely nothing to do with my supporting this. That we put in a terrible use because we don't want a building to be vacant is wrong. It's economically wrong. It's just plain a big mistake. So I'd rather see a vacant unit than a unit with a bad use in it, just to fill it up. And I think a good landlord feels that way too. They're not going to put people in a unit in a space just to keep it occupied. They've got to be a good tenant, and a good use. I'm just wondering, after reading this, if maybe this is a misnomer, and the fact that it's called adult daycare creates a bias on our part, because the adult daycare facilities I've visited have been for people with severely challenged. They're Alzheimer patients. They have all sorts of conditions that make it impossible for them really to function independently without assistance. So I'm just wondering if that's the case, and maybe that's why there are fewer support staff. I'm not sure. I would be really insulted if we've been misled here, and that that's not what we're seeing here, that we're really seeing healthy senior citizens. Nobody thinks of the Levy Center as adult daycare. Nobody. They better not. And there are very elderly people who go there every day on the bus that the Levy family has provided and that the city provides. And they're pretty active. I mean, they do all sorts of things there. And I just would never think of that as adult daycare. I just wouldn't. So I'm wondering how far, do you think maybe it should be called something else, but because it's in a funding category, it has to be called that? I don't know. But what's been presented to us is not is not a facility or not a use or a service for people who are in need of a lot of assistance. And I want to hear, before we finish this discussion, from the director that people are going to be free to come and go during the day to shop and to have dinner out, lunch outside if they so choose. If they don't want to participate in bingo, they can go over to Borders and buy a book. That's what I want to hear. Would you like to come up? And if the committee doesn't mind, yes, go ahead.
No, I said you have
Alderman Grover. Oh, Alderman Grover, did you want to ask something? Okay. Do you mind if he comes and tells us this? Hi, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chairman. Elio Montenegro, I'm the Vice President of Operations for the Omega Group of Companies. And to answer your question, yes, of course. That is the very same thing that I said at the last testimony that we gave when we last met. The seniors, to your point, they're very mobile, and perhaps the name that we're using is a it takes us in a different direction. This is a facility where individuals that are very active, and I think at the last meeting, Alderman Holmes joked that perhaps she could come and be a part of our organization. That's precisely, and if you don't mind, Alderman Holmes, I'll use you as an example. You are.
I think I might mind tonight.
and we'll open it just for you. You are a good example of the kind of residents and clients that we have visiting our facility. So I'm glad that you walked the visited the Lincolnwood facility and saw what Toohey and Lincoln Avenues are. It's very treacherous there. And our facility here, hopefully in Evanston, will give us the opportunity to open the doors and allow the clients, the members, the visitors to the center, whatever we call them, to go outside. And I made it very clear at the last meeting that we intend to do that. We intend to support the local businesses. We intend to take them out to local restaurants, shopping. We take them to the movies all the time.
Wait,
so
I
yes,
don't
we
want,
want to take
I'm
them out.
sorry to interrupt you, but you're saying you're going to take them out.
Well,
are you going to unlock the door and let them walk out and sign out and say
Yes.
we'll be back for the bus when it?
They can walk there on their own. Okay. And in fact, in the Lincolnwood facility, we have two clients who drive themselves there. So, I mean, that's how mobile they are. Right. Yes, there are some that perhaps would not go to the corner unaccompanied, and we would accompany them to the shopping mall. But for the vast majority of our members in the Lincolnwood facility, they are very mobile. They can move about as they wish. Now, if I may make one more point, the demographic here in Evanston may be different. We are going to obviously appeal to the local residents, and I was at the last community meeting, and I think we had 7 residents that came to that community, 7 or 8 that came to the community meeting, and I beg to differ with Alderman Fisk. I think half of them just wanted information. I think there was one who truly opposed this concept because they didn't understand it, but we want to be able to allow them to go visit, again, go outside. Those that need a helping hand to take them to the corner, we will provide that. And to Alderman Holmes' concern earlier, do we have sufficient staffing? We provide the staffing that is required and necessary. Again, I want to convey, I want you to try to picture this. These are individuals that are very mobile, much like yourself. If you want someone to accompany you to Barnes & Noble, very well. If you want to just go with another senior that's in the program, you're welcome to do so. So very, very, very open in that respect, and the ultimate goal here is to create an environment for the seniors where they are active, physically and emotionally engaged, and that is our ultimate goal with the center that we have in Lincolnwood and the one here in Evanston.
All right, thank you very much. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm no expert in senior services, so today I talked to one of our local experts. I called the Senior Action Services and talked to the chair of its board of directors, Ellen Brown, and I hope she'll forgive me if I misstate things. The term adult daycare is probably inappropriate. It's more like adult day programming, and the Council for Jewish Elderly does adult day programming. In fact, sends a bus into Evanston to pick up Evanston residents to participate in its programming. And there's another firm called opportunities. It does the same, and I think sends a bus to Evanston to pick up Evanston residents. And given the demographic trends, with 25% of us being over the age of 65, within, 10 years or so, that there's a need for services of this sort. It sounds to me like that the services would be entirely complementary of all the other things that we do in Evanston. I'm comfortable with the fact that they may compete with the services we provide at the Levy Center for our seniors. But Ellen Brown was very supportive of adult day programming in general. She didn't understand, didn't know this proposal would have been here tonight if she could have. But she had no problems at all with the programming per se, and says there's a real demand for it. Thank you.
Well, I don't think any of us have a problem with the program. I think it's the location, which is the issue. So, all right, we're going to wind it up. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Grover, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that every one of us here, I mean, we're all aging, hopefully gracefully, and we all do support senior services and have shown that throughout many, many meetings in the budget process and decisions that we make in Evanston. However, Alderman Rainey is again correct that this is the location that we need to be concerned about. Our downtown is relatively small. We rely on our downtown ground floor retail space to generate tax revenue for the city. This is a use that is not going to generate anything except for the landlord, and is going to provide, hopefully, a quality daycare program for its residents. But in terms of the sales tax revenue that we would hope to generate here, it's not. Residents actually were supportive of the idea that maybe if this were a little bit further east in what is going to be the former Giordano space, this would be a much more acceptable use in an office building, for example, where there was a little bit more room, a little bit access to parking, and some off-street pickup area that is not available in this current space. So they were looking to try to accommodate the use, but felt very strongly that this space was not going to work. I've heard since the meeting, I've heard from the condo boards and co-op boards that surround this block, and again, I want to emphasize that they are not against the use, they're against the location, and just would very much rather see a use in this particular building that is going to be generating revenue for the city. And I would ask also my fellow council members to think about the other vacant storefronts downtown, and should there be not-for-profit uses who want to come in there and fill up a vacant space, how we make decisions about that. I mean, we really do need to work with our business owners and property owners downtown to try to find and identify business people that will come in here and provide some much-needed tax revenue for the city.
Well, and I think the issue, if this were to pass, Alderman Fisk, and another daycare center coming in, adult daycare, then I think you would hear maybe a different discussion, because then you would start looking at a cumulative effect, which we really don't have here. I think if the provider is being realistic, that the people who are going to be visiting and attending the center are mobile and active seniors who can afford $60 a day, hopefully have a few other dollars left in their pocket after they spend that to shop. I mean, I don't see it. It's not dead in space. It's space that could conceivably be active. I'm trying to think of ways to support this, and I want to believe them. And if you can believe them, then they're going to be adding active people to our downtown who are going to be there. They're not going to be in offices working all day. They're going to be out and about if they so choose. And so, anyway.
I'm wondering if we can find a way to make a priority to Evanston residents for inclusion in this program.
We can make those kinds of conditions, I believe. I mean, we do it with employment and other things, so yes. Let's go to Alderman Nguyen, who hasn't spoken yet.
Well, I listening to the discussion, reading the materials, I think that it is a very, it is, for me, it's a very difficult position because I know this block well. And one of my serious concerns is the drop-off location. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that alley, but it's not big, and it has blind spots no matter how you exit that alley to whether it's Grove, Chicago Avenue would be terrible, or actually you can't exit it north. Well, perhaps you can. But so to me, that raises the issue that I understand the issues that these are active seniors and that they will add to our downtown, but it points up to me the fact that this is a retail space, and that's what it was originally designed as, and it is not designed to provide pickup and drop-off very well, and that alley is not a particularly good one. So I'm still thinking about this from that standpoint, literally from a physical use standpoint, because I see a problem with that.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that because that was one of the notes I had on here. Why are we making them be dropped off in the alley when we have these huge Northwestern buses driving all over town and they don't have to go down an alley to drop anybody off? And I'm just wondering, why do we have to do that? These are not going to be like tourist sightseeing buses, right? Are they going to be like city buses or like the little buses? So what is the size of the vehicle?
We have two vehicles. One is a minivan that we all have, a Dodge Caravan. The other one is a 12-passenger, maybe 13-passenger Ford.
Is there any reason other than Zoning Board of Appeals said you had to drop off in the alley?
That was the compromise that we brought to the table. We were asked if there was an option because there was a concern raised about traffic in the front, and we said certainly we can go in the back. And in fact, we worked with Mr. McBrackus to figure out a way how we could do it through the back. I think the alley is wide enough. On any given day, I've seen UPS and Federal Express trucks delivering to the building that's just east of this property. Number one, so in the alley, it's actually a little wider than average. And secondly, there's a huge drop-off zone right behind the 525 address, the address in question here. So the bus can actually pull in there and backed off. And for us, actually, the bus, it makes sense to drop it off in the back because it's safer, and it's an easier access to turn left and right on Chicago versus the one-way street. So we went to the alley as a way of meeting the board and other questions.
Alderman Nguyen? So if they want to do that,
No, I understand that. But, and I would not support having them drop off in the front because every single one of those parking spaces is used and filled immediately as soon as it's empty. So are all of your clients coming by this minivan?
We have, we have one drop-off in the morning and then the pickup in the afternoon. And the answer to your question is those that are picked up by the bus, yes. There may be local residents that will just walk and be a part of those day programs. And duly noted that, perhaps CARE is not a word that we should be using, but the adult day programs that we'll be hosting. So they could very well be a resident from one of the nearby buildings that will walk over. But the vast majority who choose to be picked up by the bus, yes, we offer that service. They don't have to take advantage of it.
Would any of them be driving themselves or be driven by someone else?
I suppose they could if someone wants to be driven and dropped off. But more often than not, when you get to that age, you want to take advantage of the service of being picked up. I mean, if we provide that service, I mean that's one of the appealing aspects of this program is that you have that transportation service available.
it's included in the price of
Yes.
the day, yeah, so you might as well use it.
Yes, of sorts.
All right,
Thank you.
anybody else? Alderman Fisk, do you want to pursue, Lionel, did you
I
have
just
your-
wanted to make a comment. When we talk about mobile seniors, that doesn't mean without assistance. Just, because some folks are walking with cane, with walker, I still think that they're mobile.
Oh, sure.
But, they're still sharp. The other thing is that I would like to stipulate in the final document approving this that if the city finds out that those who are being admitted are in fact seniors with mental incapacities, and we are not allowing freedom of movement, then that use would be rescinded. I think we have to put that in there.
I'd like to hear from our lawyers on that.
Well, we need to talk about that. I just want to make sure that it doesn't become something other than what is said.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, as this is before first the committee and the council and the committee are free to, by motion, amend the ordinance in its current form and attach additional conditions. This is often done. Most recently was done with 555 Howard relative to issues. So if I would recommend that an appropriate motion be made, and I will note the language accordingly, and the vote can be taken, and we can move on, if that's the will of the committee and council.
Right. And also the language about Evanston residents being given first choice for being participants?
Very well. Probably for purposes of the record, if someone would make an omnibus motion with those 3 points, that would probably be the easiest, so that a voice vote could be taken on that particular motion all at once with that language.
Alderman Jean-Baptiste?
Yes. Okay. Then in that case, I would. Well, you've made the motion to approve the use.
I made the motion to modify the recommendation to a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Would you mind if I made, I guess, a comment on one of your points that you're making?
Okay, go ahead.
With regard to the mobility question, I think it's been represented that it's possible they don't know who their customers are at this point, I guess, in effect. And I'm picturing that it's possible that you're going to have a spectrum of mobility or lack of mobility. And you might have somebody who has a scooter, or might have somebody who's in a wheelchair. You might have a number of things that might or might not restrict movement. So I don't know that we can, I'm having trouble visualizing how we can build your suggestion of, lack of or freedom of movement.
No, I'm talking about restriction in terms of ability to come in and out.
So as far as the center
restricted.
precluding people from coming or going.
Right.
I see. Okay.
That doesn't mean that they cannot, be accompanied.
Okay.
But I think one of the concerns that some of the prejudice that was created in terms of talking about daycare is whether or not this will be a group of seniors who, are captive.
Well, we don't want this to be a lockdown facility, right?
We don't want it to be that kind of course.
Right,
So,
certainly.
So I'm trying to figure out process, since you had moved the thing. First, you may need to add those items.
So I'd like to revise my motion to approval, to condition that approval on the inclusion of language that would give Evanston residents first priority in participating in the program.
Wait. I don't think, I think the motion should be either to approve or deny, and then there should be amendments with conditions, being the conditions of, that the approval is based on this, and this. And if there's a violation of the conditions, then the special use will be, extinguished.
Madam Chairman and members of the committee, in looking at the proposed ordinance, as I'm thinking about this, I believe that it should be the original motion for approval and then an amendment to the motion to approve, incorporating the 3 tenants. And what I propose to do in the draft ordinance is add an additional section H, which, following this committee's consideration and the council's consideration, section H would be additional applicable provisions conditioning this use. So I think that the original motion to approve should be voted upon, and then the suitable amendment proposed thereto regarding these three proposed additional conditions.
Yeah, it's a condition, right, yeah.
Right. Anybody else? Do you have a problem with that, Alderman Wilson?
Not at all.
Okay, all right. Alderman Jean-Baptiste?
No.
Is that okay?
I don't.
Alderman Fisk?
I just have a question for Law Department. Does that mean if we vote in that order, does that mean if this special use goes out of business, that another special use can come in without the conditions?
Well, if the special use would be other for something else besides an adult day.
No, I mean for an adult daycare. If we vote in that order, does that mean that someone who is operating an adult daycare can also come in? Or do we put those
Alderman
conditions?
Fisk, can't we restrict this special use to this provider? I mean, this isn't the owner of the property. This is the
particular, this special use in this application must necessarily be limited to this particular applicant.
Okay.
All right, we need to note
Make sure
that.
that's included.
All right. All right, so we have before us an amendment to the special use for an adult daycare center at 52426 Davis Street to approve, with the conditions that, number one, there be Evanston residents.
We're not there yet.
No, we have to
I
approve
think we
the main
approved
motion.
the,
The general motion right now.
Well, I disagree with that.
No, but that was your suggestion.
No, not that we approve it first and then approve the standards. See, I think the standards, the conditions have to be approved first. Because what if we approve the intention of the person wanting the standards added or the conditions added, it's based upon approving the ordinance. So why would we approve the ordinance and then maybe some of us will decide we don't like the conditions?
okay, I'll withdraw my original motion, and we can address a motion to add these suggestions to the proposed ordinance.
Okay, so all the conditions, they're not standards, they're conditions that are before us. The amendments to the ordinance are that the guests or the clients or the whatever of the daycare center be given preference to Evanston residents, right? And number two, Alderman Jean-Baptiste, could you restate that because I'm having trouble with
That the guests not be restricted by the staff of this facility from going outside and frequenting the local businesses.
And was that the sum total of your recommendation?
That was,
Okay.
yes, in
All right.
terms of that.
All right, so we have those two before us. Could you make a motion to that?
But the third one was that, well, I guess it was given that the individuals who would be admitted would not be individuals with any kind of mental limitations, you know. I mean, that's what we said because it's not that kind of facility with that staffing. So in the language, it's indicated. I don't know whether or not we need to repeat that.
Okay. Alderman Wilson wants to comment.
I feel like that last point is a little bit too gray, and actually not a little bit. I don't think that we could really realistically include something like that. You have, again, you have a spectrum. You know, to say someone with limited mental capacity,
Well,
where to
yeah.
begin on defining that? I don't think we should try to
I agree with him on that.
address that.
I think that's too hard line on.
Yeah,
So-
it is tough to.
The conditions are that first of all, that participants be given first choice as Evanston residents. Second of all, that they be mobile and not be restricted in any way from coming and going during the center's day. All those in favor of supporting those two conditions, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. All right.
So I'd like to make a motion to, based upon the change in the ordinance that we just adopted, to revise our recommendation to a recommendation of approval.
For this applicant.
for this applicant alone.
All right. All those in favor of recommending approval, which is an amendment of what is before us of the special use for 524, 526 Davis Street, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay. All right. This will be taken to the council as a recommendation for approval with the two conditions. All right. Next, we have major variance request for open front yard parking space at 1408 Dempster Street. Zoning Board of Appeals and Site Plan and Appearance Review Committee and staff recommends denial of an application. This was before us previously. We asked our staff to go out and do extra work. We asked the applicant to respond, and it is now before us again. So, what is the committee's pleasure?
Alderman Rainey, this is in my ward, and the staff has been, I think, very diligent in looking for ways to potentially make this work, and it just simply doesn't look to me, and I guess to the staff, that there is a realistic way of making this work in an appropriate fashion that would be safe for both the property owner and the public generally. So I don't see any reason to deviate from the staff's recommendation.
So you're moving that
Accept.
we deny, right?
I'd rather somebody else move it, but
Okay.
that's my view.
Alderman Nguyen, or Alderman Holmes.
Alderman Rainey, I would move to accept the ZBA's recommendation to deny the application.
Second.
Okay. Alderman Holmes, do you want to speak to this? No. I mean, I was impressed that staff told us that they can park in the back. There's already a
Way
covered
to
surface
come out
where
on
they
Dempster.
can park in the back. All right. All those in favor of recommending denial to the council, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is ordinance 77010, which amends various portions of the zoning ordinance relating to religious institutions in the business, commercial, and downtown zoning district, in addition to removing religious institutions from the general exceptions from the reevaluation of off-street parking requirements for changes of use. So this has already been introduced. It was brought back to the committee based on various walks down Howard and meetings with the ministers and other interested parties, and it is before us now with staff recommendation and Zoning Board of Approval, Plan Commission recommendation. Yes, Alderman Wilson.
Was there a motion? I guess we need a motion.
A motion?
Pardon me?
I move approval.
Okay. You move it back to council for action. Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Alderman Wilson?
We're discussing here, right, as
Right.
opposed to council?
Pardon me?
Okay, well, I'll defer to council. No need to take the time
It's
now.
for action on the council
Right.
agenda.
Right.
It's-
Okay.
But we need to move it back to the council because it
Right.
was
Okay.
brought back here.
So,
All right. Okay, so.
I so move that we move
Okay,
it to the
it's
council.
going to council. All those in favor of sending this back to the council for consideration, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next item is an item for discussion, the public art projects that staff brought to us. I think here is Johanna Neiden, who is here to make a presentation to us. If you also wish to have any additional information, I thought the memo was excellent, and it looks like Mr. Bobkowitz is also.
Madam Chair, members
Yes.
of the committee, I just have a clarifying point to make, that this was an issue that came to us, the staff from Alderman Rainey, initially thinking of lighthouses.
Yeah.
The staff report talks about planes, trains, automobiles, pigs, cows, but Alderman Rainey
Purple cow.
suggested lighthouses in keeping with our lighthouse.
I
Ms.
mean,
Knight
where the
is-
cows thing came from, I think it's just like.
Well, it's just meant to be illustrative that other communities have
Yeah,
done.
it's a universal thing ever since Chicago did cows. But many, many years ago, when the city was presented with these signs that is above the mayor's desk. These signs were meant to be the entry to the city signs,
Alderman
believe it
Rainey.
or not. Yes.
Just a point of procedure. I don't know whether the clergy is leaving because they thought that the issue is resolved.
I think they're probably going out to talk.
Caucus,
Yeah.
okay, no problem.
If not, if there are any members here who would like to,
Staff.
I'm sure they know that we're going to have our council meeting after
Doug,
this.
could you just double check?
And those that left have spoken, so maybe, anyway, to get back to the issue at hand. So anyway, that's when the idea for public art lighthouses came from, because they're equally as decorative as cows.
And Madam Chair,
And they're more appropriate for Evanston than cows.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
members of the committee, in the interest
Yes.
of time, Ms. Knight did a very extensive report. Sabina Mora, our ICMA Management Fellow, also added to that as well. So if you'd like, we can answer questions. Otherwise, our recommendation is that this be forwarded to the Public Art Committee, give them a few months to chew on it, and then to return to the council after the first of the year.
Would it be possible for them not to chew on it for a couple of months? I mean, this is the kind of thing, they've heard about this several years ago, and I would like to ask, as one of the people with the idea, that it be placed a little higher up on their agenda.
And Alderman Rainey, we're certainly happy to go with the council's direction. I think we were thinking practically that we're already now in the middle of December. They will not be meeting again until probably a month from now, the middle of January.
That's
We
fine.
wanted them to at least
Yeah.
have 2 meetings to talk about it, and then to return to the council, I believe was the first meeting in March. So
yeah.
I think 2 meetings of the Public Art Committee is a reasonable time period. We'll stay on them to make sure that they make their deadline.
All right, all right. Okay, anybody want to comment on any of the other issues that are presented by the Public Art? Alderman
Well-
Jean-Baptiste.
Only that I know that in the, at least in the Dempster Dodge Business District, some of the business owners have begun to talk about art, public art, to mark particular intersections, particular districts. So I would love to see that kind of discussion also be brought to those different districts that may in fact be situs for this particular piece.
Well, you remember the cows in Chicago?
Yes.
I mean, they were in front of in every district. So, I mean, it's just something that just, when people walk by them, they really pop the district wherever they
Great
live.
idea.
All right, let's move on, and hopefully in a couple of months, we'll hear from them. Thank you for the report from Community Development. It was excellent. All right, anything else? Alderman? No, hearing nothing. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Okay. Alderman Jean-Baptiste, when do we come back? In 15, 20 minutes?
Right?
What? No, we can't come back.
Immediately. See?
Well, the
I
chair
don't even
needs to
know the vote.
excuse herself for a few minutes, so. Come back immediately.